I usually call myself a solo developer, but the truth is I'm getting a lot of help. The biggest thing I've learned so far working on Galactic Chef is that game design is a lot harder than I thought. I dove into Galactic Chef naively, thinking that a cooking competition show game would be pretty straightforward. I just need some cooking gameplay, some simulation, a way to generate dishes for the competitors, and a way to score them all, and to package it all up into a format similar to real cooking competition shows. But once you go deeper, there are 1,000 harder questions to answer. Looking at just the scoring part alone, what are the criteria, and do they change over time? How often do you need to change the criteria to keep things fresh and interesting? How do you balance them so that they're not too easy or too difficult? And do you tell the player all the criteria up front, or let them discover it as they go? Do you go for realism or simplicity, or somewhere in between? I've really struggled with some of these decisions, and I'm not done. Some of the criteria right now are too easy and some too unforgiving, and I'm going to have to add a lot more to have the variety I need for a full-length game. But getting as far as I have would have been so much more difficult without all the feedback I'm getting from playtesters, people on Discord, and even some YouTube comments. I don't reply to a lot of comments, but I do read all of them. As an introvert, it's surprisingly difficult for me to just stop and reply to people one-on-one, even when I know that I should. And I don't get that many comments, so I don't really have an excuse, but if you are one of the people that's been leaving supportive messages, please know that I really appreciate it, and it does help keep me motivated. Speaking of which, I haven't mentioned Patreon in a long time, and I'm blown away that there are still people supporting me there, even though I haven't been putting out videos regularly for quite a while. I don't offer anything to my patrons currently, and I even put up a poll asking what they would like, but the only response I got was just to maintain the status quo. The whole point of these videos has always been to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of making a game. So I'm going to double down on that. As I'm finishing Galactic Chef, I'm going to talk about everything involved in finishing and shipping a game. Pretty soon that's going to mean starting marketing efforts, which will be a big learning experience for me, and hopefully what I learned will help you too. But in the meantime, here's a bit of a retrospective on the last few months. To be honest, I was stuck in a rut for a while, sort of redesigning the same systems over and over because I wasn't quite happy with them. Mainly the ingredient generation and substance behaviors. Things like how the thresholds are determined for something being overcooked or burnt, and how the different tools and equipment affect the texture and flavor of food. I didn't want every ingredient to behave the same, but I also wanted it to be predictable enough, and I didn't know quite where to strike the balance between realism and simplicity. And then a couple of deadlines came to my attention that changed everything. The Godot showreel submission deadline was July 1st, and Yogscast Tiny Teams was taking submissions up until July 17th. I figured both of those would be really valuable promotional opportunities I didn't want to miss, but the game was not in good shape. I'd been ripping things apart over and over and not really put everything back together to make a complete playable experience, so I had a lot of work to do and not much time. Although I'd already been in a sort of crunch mode for a while, this is when the real crunch mode started. So I tried to plan out what I could realistically get done in just a few weeks, and I had to make a lot of difficult choices, cut a lot of things that I really wanted to get done. Then, despite my best efforts and staying up to 5 a.m. working sometimes, I fell behind even that plan and had to cut even more. I scrambled to get just the basic gameplay loop working again, to be able to submit dishes, get judged, and move on to the next challenge. And then I rushed to put together enough content to at least visually show a few different challenges and worlds in time for the showreel deadline, and I barely pulled it off. But Tiny Teams was the bigger and more important goal, coming up just a couple of weeks later. I needed new tutorials. I needed to fix a lot of things that didn't really show in the showreel, but would definitely stand out to anyone playing the game for real. Less than a week before the deadline, I finally had my first playable build, and it only had the first 2 of 3 tutorials. I actually built the 3rd tutorial while my friend Kostas was playing through the first 2, and there were a lot of bugs to fix, a complete lack of polish and balance, and I threw in a half-baked pilot episode just so that there'd be something to play beyond the tutorial. That part was barely tested at all and a complete mess. And despite all that, the one comment I got from every playtester was that this was a huge improvement from the old build I put out last year. So with that baseline, I started iterating rapidly and putting out new builds every day for a while. I fixed a ton of bugs, I added a few new features, and huge thanks to everyone who playtested during this time, because your feedback was vital to getting a decent build ready in time for the submission deadline. Sadly, I didn't make it into tiny teams, but I'm still really happy with the progress I made, and there's still a lot of work to do, but I have a clearer picture of what needs to be done. But for now, I'm taking myself out of crunch mode and taking a break from mostly bug fixing to work on a few more fun new features. Right now I'm working on a new ingredient choosing step at the beginning of a contest, so you have some agency over what you'll be cooking with. And after that I want to do one more round of revisions to the ingredient generation and substance behaviors, but this time I'm not going to let it drag on for long. I'm wrapping up the last of the changes I need to make this all work well, and hopefully the next build I release will be a complete demo with all of these systems in their final form, more or less. I'm also aiming to go back to regular weekly videos now, at least until there's another tight deadline crunch. So I want your input on what you'd like to see. Do you want to go deep on code and how things work, or maybe talk about game design decisions, or maybe something about workflow and how I'm organizing to get more productive? Let me know in the comments. As always, it really helps me out if you hit the like button, spread the word, and subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, thanks for watching.